Hi friends, and welcome back to Raft. We've been talking a lot about Raft's story recently, and its focus on climate change and the way environmental damage will affect the human population is especially pertinent today, which just happens to be Earth Day. In celebration of our planet and of a game that focuses on the consequences of our failure to protect it, let's talk about what we can expect from Raft's Chapter 3 story. This is all speculation by me based on what the devs have told us in various blog updates or via their Twitter feed, so none of this is confirmed, but I have some pretty solid theories based on my understanding of the current story in the game. Really quick, I'm just going to slap in my usual Chapter 3 story disclaimer here. As part of those aforementioned dev blog updates, we know that the story in-game will change slightly from how it exists right now. However, we know it's just meant to make the story easier to understand by doing things like cutting out names of characters we only hear from once. So please bear in mind that my prediction may be way off base, but it's still fun to speculate while we wait on some new content. Anyways, let's get into the potential storyline for Raft's Chapter 3 update. Let's start with Varuna Point, the first location we know will exist after Tangaroa. In a lot of ways, it seems to be similar to Tangaroa, a kind of floating city in the blue, complete with 1970s vibe luxury apartments, but with two major differences. First, construction was obviously never completed. Second, a large part is underwater. We know from various newspaper clippings and the notes around the world that Tangaroa wasn't the only floating city designed to harbor people in a sunken world. We also know that the designs were rushed and poorly staffed. At the time of launch, they were still experimental and untested, leaving a crew to deal with any and all issues that they couldn't deal with ahead of time. Tangaroa's captain even calls his crew fools and idiots, emphasizing that no one was ready for the cities to be used so early, which leads me to my theory for Varuna Point. Although I have no idea what characters will tell their stories here, we can assume that Varuna Point has suffered a similar fate to Tangaroa in lack of preparation before being forced into full use. The result of this is pure speculation based purely on vibes and what I think would make a cool story. So, as I mentioned earlier, a large portion of Varuna Point is underwater while a lot was still under construction. We're going to say was under construction because given the trend of past story locations, I think it's very unlikely that we'll find more living people here, but more on that later. Anyways, I think that Varuna Point was deployed well before it was ready to host people, and those people were desperate looking for any scrap of dry land, would take whatever escape they were offered regardless of its unpolished finish, instead of just drowning in the rising water. Workers are continuing to build the city while maintaining its population when something goes horribly wrong. The flotation method fails for part of the city, and it plunges into the blue. Given that we only see the taller parts from this angle, we can't know what the edges look like, but I'd be willing to bet that Varuna Point has a bottom hull kind of similar to the one from Tangaroa. And if the designers are smart, which I'm not saying that they are, but I'm kind of hoping, this hull would be divided into multiple sealed segments, kind of like those big ocean liners of our modern seas, so that if some parts did fail, not all of the city would go down. Unfortunately, the finished parts of the city would obviously be the parts that were inhabited by those same desperate people. And if the weight wasn't properly balanced and the hull was weakened by the unfinished construction, it's possible that the people in those sunken apartments went down with that segment of the city. A tragedy of that scale certainly isn't out of line with Raft's story so far, if you've seen my previous covering of the darker parts of Raft's story, but the fact that an unfinished ship could break in half is definitely within the realm of possibility. Just look at the Titanic for reference. It broke in half due to the strain of the pressure weighting one half down. A circular design with more modern engineering might be able to leave that other half floating, which is what I think we'll find when we visit Varuna Point. Those top levels of the apartments may still be sticking out of the water, or those who survived the hull failure may have other problems to look out for as well. The devs have also gifted us this lovely piece of art, which is tagged with Varuna Point, but what could the people of Varuna Point need such drastic protection for? Well, what if Varuna Point is more similar to Tangaroa than we thought? Tangaroa shut down due to a major beetle infestation, eating up all of their food and even clogging the engines with beetle guts. The devs have also given this teaser of a very large beetle-like critter. Maybe some unfortunate mishap caused a rather large species of beetle to invade Varuna Point, much like the rats took over the cruise ship. These traps look perfectly designed to deter insects with such a hard carapace, and maybe protect some people inside. But that's just the first location, and we've still got lots more to talk about, so let's move on. The next location we know about is somewhere in a snowy location, but I think we'll find a lot of connections to previous story locations buried in the ice. As we learned at the radio tower, there were 4 engineers responsible for maintaining a handful of nuclear reactors on a platform somewhere close to the radio tower that ended up sinking when the water got too high. But not before the group's shady employers came to take away the remaining functioning reactors and 2 of the engineers. We later hear from someone that I think is one of those 2 engineers that say there are places down south powered by fusion reactors. And I don't know about you, but this looks a whole lot like a building that would hold a fusion reactor to me. We also have reason to believe that Sparrow, the best engineer of the original radio tower group, would still be responsible for maintaining that reactor. So I think we may encounter some more of their story here. To me, this looks like a researcher's room with that field laptop, and those big boxes of printer paper that are undoubtedly holding gazillions of things other than just paper. But there's still more to unpack in this snowy location. In addition to that reactor with the glowing lights, throughout the world we also see newspapers claiming that the wealthy of the world are taking up sanctuary at the poles where the sea hopefully won't reach them. So let's put that together with our tidbit about the fusion reactors down south. I'm gonna say that this is probably the South Pole filled with the wealthy elite. Or at least once housed the wealthy elite. Again, given that we've never encountered another living human as of yet, I'm willing to bet that we're not going to find a whole bunch of people who have never worked a day in their life are somehow thriving in a freezing environment where they actually have to do everything themselves. But I won't rule it out entirely. Basically, I think that somehow the fusion reactors stopped functioning, just like they did on the reactor platform before the radio tower, leaving most of the polar base without steady power, so it had to be abandoned just like every other location. All in all, the screenshots for this location are less revealing than the other ones we've got for Varuna Point, but I think this follows all of the other trends we've seen in the story so far, and it does a nice job of connecting back to previous locations and lore. And finally, we know for certain that there will be a 3rd story location as part of Chapter 3, but the devs have been holding their cards close to their chest, so we really don't know a lot about it. Here's what we do know. This image. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But that doesn't mean we can't take a stab at what we think this location might hold story-wise. Personally, I think these small houses could belong to some of the people displaced by the Niger Desert spread. Again, reading into these newspapers found on the top of Caravan Town, and with the help of this note found in a nearby trailer, we know that the desert was spreading either before or while the ocean was rising. This was already displacing people who would have needed a new place to go, and I think that these houses were built by those people. If there's going to be a larger civilization of people who are still together and somewhat thriving, my money's on this place. Other than that, we have absolutely nothing to go on. But it leads me nicely into my final points I want to make about what I think the story will bring. As part of the most recent dev blog, we also got this image with the promise of new unlockable characters. You may have heard me theorize that these characters may be encountered as NPCs at the various story locations, but that in itself might just be my wishful thinking. However, I do have a pretty good guess as to where we may find these people if they are NPCs. So let's start with that final village of Nigerian people. I believe that this person would be well suited to that hypothetical location. From the fully covered skin to block out the sun, to the hoop earrings and the cornrow-like hairstyle, they fit the same vibe that those houses give off to me. Next up, I think this person on the far right is likely someone we'll encounter at the South Pole. They have that thicker clothing with a hoodie or jacket and full-length, thicker-looking pants to withstand the cold. I don't know why exactly, but they do give me graduate student vibes, and may even be Sparrow, the missing engineer for the fusion reactor. Sparrow is canonically female, and this character doesn't give off hugely feminine vibes, but also it's a silhouette, and who judges anyways. Then there's this person second in from the left. They look like they've been through some major disaster with the uneven frayed pants and a cut-off shirt, so I might expect to find them at Varuna Point, having survived the plunge and fending off some massive beetles, just hoping to make it through all of this horrible mess. And finally, we've got this person on the far left. This one is the most interesting to me, mostly because of this painting in-game. We obviously know who two of these people are. That's Maya and that's Rohi, both of whom are already playable characters in-game. I'm willing to bet that this silhouette on the far left is the same person sitting down in the painting. From the short sleeves and rolled up pants, plus the consistency of the cargo type pocket and the boiler suit aesthetic in the painting, and the very real possibility that their braid could just be tucked behind their back in the painting, I fully believe that these are the same person. But where would you find such a close friend, you may be wondering? Well, we also know that you're a forward scout, one of at least a few at that, if you have designated symbols to tell others where you've been to a location. And we also know that Chapter 3 is adding in trading posts to exchange materials, theoretically, with those other forward scouts. Someone would need to staff those trading posts, so whether it's a central trading port or some random encounter, I think we'll find a friend in that trading system. There could also be more characters that the devs are hiding from us. Again, we only got some concept art for the third story location, so I'm not ruling out any possibilities. But I think that summarizes everything I think Raft's Chapter 3 story will be. Tragic, beautiful, and leaving you wanting more, just as the last two chapters have. But for now, we're stuck waiting for the day it arrives. Until then, I hope you enjoyed. Please consider leaving a like if you did, and consider subscribing if you haven't already to see plenty more Raft content in the meantime. Also, let me know if you think my prediction has any merit, or if you think I'm way off base. I'm particularly excited to learn more as development continues, and I may update this as we get more details. But that's it for now. I hope to see you again soon, and as always, have a great day.